This week's conversation is with Lisa Graham. Lisa has been in the spiritual healing space for over 15 years. Her specialty is past life memory and deep soul recall, the ancient contracts, vows, agreements, and karma that many healers aren't aware of. Offering safe space in her writers group and soul coaching, she wants to empower you to embrace your inner self, healer and creative. And this conversation was really, really fascinating. I love all things past life, karmic sort of work. I really live in that space. It's such a beautiful and interesting and fascinating, again, all the adjectives conversation. So we really talked about what got Lisa into this work, how she started, how she works with people. She describes how she's had a 2 billion year karmic contract, and just understanding, I think, how all of that works. I think that, a big piece of my journey has been an understanding that some of the things that we hold in our body, right, like our emotions, our physical sensations in the body, our body holds memory, like in our cells. And it's so easy to attach a narrative to what's coming up. And sometimes it actually has nothing to do with this life, right? It's beyond us. It's ancestral, it's familial, it's past life that we're not even really aware of. And Lisa really describes it all so beautifully and talks about the ability and like when it's right to like move through this, because I would imagine that remembering billions of years of past lives, they're not all lives that we are proud of or that are, some of them I'm sure are painful to remember. And so, yeah, it just was a really, really interesting conversation. I'm excited for you all to listen to this. So we dive into all of that. So as this comes out on Thursday, we have our new moon in Sagittarius tomorrow. So I wrote a Substack about it. I've talked about it all over social media, so you can go check them out over there. But this is really I've been saying it so much lately, and I feel like getting clear on our values and our beliefs. Sagittarius is the seeker. It's looking for truth. It's philosophy. It's non-dogmatic religion. It's movement because it's a mutable fire sign, right? It's adaptable and it's optimistic, right? It is like the happiest or the most positive new moon. There are nuances of that with this one because it is square to Saturn and Neptune, which bring in a little bit more seriousness to this typically optimistic moon. But it is really giving us an opportunity to, I think, like I said, right now the energy is really calling us to be so rooted in ourselves, to be so grounded in our values. And one of the shadows of Sagittarius is sort of this like on to the next energy, right? Like on to the next thing. And Sagittarius doesn't necessarily always sit in the emotional experience, but Sagittarius also is moving from the physical to the spiritual, right? So we've been in this physical body with the rest of the zodiac, right? And then we come to this energy where we're now expanding our minds outside of the physical 3D that we can see, right? We're asking these really big questions. And I think as we move into 2026, so next week's podcast episode is going to be a reflection of 2025 and then a sort of forecast of sorts. It'll be sort of a forecast of 2026 astrologically of what it's going to look like. But we are, I feel like, I could go into it and I've talked about it before, but 2025 really stripped us, and 2026 is offering us an opportunity. It's going to be really fast paced, but it's offering us an opportunity to be so rooted in ourselves. Saturn and Neptune are moving into Aries, and this is like, we're like confident in who we are, and we're moving forward and we're assertive and all these things. And so I think the work of the last year has really been to be grounded in yourself. And so, I'll get into that next week, but it's really powerful portal, we'll say. And the winter solstice also happens on Sunday. So again, this is just another door to another season, and everything is cyclical. And Astro Design School will officially be launching again, but in a new way. So we're going to start in January when the sun moves into gate 41. And this is going to be a year-long exploration of the self. So we're going to be moving through the seasons. We're going to be moving through the astrology, through the human design, but really layering it on your chart, like on your knowing. So it's sort of like being a student of yourself. You're going to be learning yourself as we move with the moon, as we move with the transits, as we learn how to integrate that into our life. So it's like embodied education in a sense, because you're going to be learning the astrology and the human design, but in such a way that you're actually physically moving through it. So it's not just learning things from a book, right? It's like we're learning things, but we're moving through it together. And the other piece to this space is community. We're doing it together. And I think that is the most informative, transformative, educational space to be in, especially when it comes to human design and astrology, because again, we can read it all from a book, but when you actually learn it from someone's lived experiences, and then you're able to see the nuances of how that plays on their chart and how the planets are speaking through them, it's such a beautiful learning experience. So you can join through the link down below if you want to join us. Again, it is a year-long experience where we are learning, we're being the student of ourselves, we're exploring ourselves through the lens of the transits, the moon, seasons of astrology, and we're also learning about the astrology. So that, I'm super excited for that. Again, link down below. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Rochelle.Christiane. That's ROCHELLE.CHRISTIANE. And Lisa can be found at Moon Over Pisces. And on Instagram, she is, Moon Over Pisces everywhere. Again, go click the link below and give her a follow. And I will talk to you next week. Welcome to the podcast. Today I have Lisa Graham, who focuses on past life memory and deep soul recall, as well as ancient contracts, karmic agreements, and things that, I mean, this excites me so much because I was just having a conversation with someone over the weekend too. And sometimes I will sit and like feel certain things, right? That I'm like, there's literally no basis in this life of like why I would feel this so intensely. So the idea of, us carrying these things on from past life is just amazing and fascinating. So I'm really excited to get into it. But we'll start with really just like, I'm going to hand you the floor to kind of introduce yourself. Anything pivotal along the way, basically like your story. I just love to know, how people kind of came into these gifts and, whether it was like from childhood or something that happened, within your life. And then, we'll just get to today and dive in.
Awesome. Yes. So, thank you so much for having me. Start with that. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about my work because it's fun, right? Like if you're not having fun with this stuff, it's not worth doing, right?
Yeah.
So my name is Lisa. I am an energy healer. I've been doing this work for, well, going on 16 years now. And it was quite a journey to get here. So like everybody else in the community, well, maybe not everybody, but majority of people who are drawn to this work, I didn't have a great childhood. I didn't have a great first marriage. Um, things, my life has not been easy. Let's put it that way. And in the course of trying to, put myself back together, especially, finding myself stepping into my second marriage that I've been in for about 12 years now. We spent a lot of time just trying to figure out who we are. And I have always been drawn to, spiritual and energy type work, especially having been, this is going to sound funny, but especially having been raised going to church every Sunday, right? Go to church every Sunday, you're going to go to hell, the type of upbringing. And, religion's great for some people, but it wasn't for me because there were so many things I've been experiencing since I was a child, seeing spirits, feeling like I had people around me that I could talk to that nobody else could see. I couldn't even really actually physically see them, but I just knew they were there. I've always known they were there. And when I was about 14, Family and Children's Services decided it was a better idea for my brother and I to move out of our father's house and move into our mother's house, which was kind of like jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire, I've always said. And The big difference being that, my father was the religious one and his wife, they were the ones who took us to church and those kinds of things. But my mom was the psychic, crunchy, granola hippie, who was absolutely terrified to embrace any of her indigenous roots. Um, People from Canada would be familiar with the residential schools. My mother was a survivor of that. She was part of what they called the 60s scoop. And we didn't talk about it. So denial was a really big thing that happened in my family.
Mm.
And so to have these experiences with her, 16 years old, she drags me to a metaphysical shop for the first time. And there's tarot cards and dream catchers and crystals everywhere, which we had crystals around the house. Like my mom had always had amethysts and geodes and things that she talked about. She always burned incense, but she never encouraged me. As a matter of fact, she actually did energy work on me as a teenager that bound things up for me that I actually discovered about 6 or 7 years ago and
Mm.
had to start unbinding. So, long story short, I jumped into the spiritualist church about 2009, 2010, somewhere in there, and thought I was going to be the next Teresa Caputo. That was always my joke going into it. I was like, yeah, this mediumship stuff is great. But then I discovered Reiki, and I got my Reiki attunements, Reiki master certification, and I just kind of meandered because that was when I left. My father passed away. I left my first marriage, and I had to basically rebuild my life. And then 2017, 2018, it kind of snowballed again. Um, Life just wasn't going how I wanted it to. And I had no idea what was going on. Throughout all of this, though, I'd had some random, spontaneous past life recalls. We did past life meditations, and I would connect sporadically with different pieces of these lives and understand some of the things. And I kept thinking, well, when's it my turn? Like, when do I get to do the things I want to do? Because for the most part, I felt like I was actually working through my childhood stuff and working through all of that stuff. And then in 2019, I discovered Atlantean Reiki, and this really kind of put me out the cosmos.
Mm.
Atlantean Reiki is great for connecting out into the galactic records and things like that, but not specifically the Akashic records, because I
Okay.
found out I had a contract. I wasn't allowed to go in there.
Mm. Into the Akashic records?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
that was a fun piece to play with there.
Mm.
So I played with that for a couple of years. And then, of course, the world blew up in 2020, as we all know. And I was forced to sit and really start looking at things on a more deep level. And then I was introduced to Kundalini Reiki. That was my game changer just over 4 years ago. And I have gone from playing small and not knowing who I am to like, hey, this is who I am and I'm powerful. And if you don't like it, so too bad.
Mm.
And this is where the past life memory really started coming into play. Um, I discovered aspects of myself. There were contracts. I wasn't allowed to go into the records. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of different things, but it was because, oh, okay, we're going to go there. Okay. There's an aspect of um, I guess you could call it a relationship that I had with Hades
Mm.
um, for 2 billion years. My soul history goes back 2 billion years. And it was basically and no, I was not Persephone. Um,
Mm.
I was someone else. But it was basically a manipulative, abusive relationship. And I joke because I finally figured out how to destroy that contract about 6 or 8 months ago. And so I'm like, yeah, I just got out of a 2 billion-year-old,
Mm.
manipulative relationship. Hey, how's life, right? But when I did that, when I finally found that contract, that's when things really opened up and the memories just started pouring in. And I've remembered, not just my lifetimes here on Earth, but I remember, when my soul was captured and put in a jar. I remembered living on a planet near the star Rigel, on a planet near the star Bellatrix. I remember pieces of the Orion Wars. I mean, we are talking things that sound absolutely insane, but I know I lived them. And how I know, I can feel them. That has always been my number one big indicator. How does it make you feel when you connect with that memory?
Mm.
Your body, believe it or not, your body actually carries all of that memory, right? All of that soul memory, all of that cellular memory, it brings it with it. So it's been a very long journey to get here. But now I really am stepping into, I went through kind of a period where I was teaching Kundalini Reiki, which I love teaching. But now I'm going to incorporate that into, because a big part of the work that I'm really focusing on now is so many people who do past lives, they do hypnosis or they do, like I'm gonna do the reading for you. My goal is to teach people to do it for themselves, because we're in the age of Aquarius. Pluto and Aquarius, the next 20 years or whatever it is, it's not about let me be your guru, but let me teach you how to be your own guru. And
Hmm.
that's my next kind of big step is I'm offering a couple of little micro courses over the course of the next few weeks to um, teach people, like, here's the basics, right, of like how you can start getting in touch with these things. And then we're going to do a whole 6-month intensive. Like, we're going to dive into everything, every part of your life, because I really feel like with where the energy's going. And again, like I said before we started, this Pisces stellium is like, let's pay attention to where the energy is today and where things need to go.
Mm.
And where it's headed is, this has always been my kind of feeling in the background. There's a lot of talk right now about alien disclosure and aliens visiting and all of this stuff, but I'm like, I don't necessarily think that it's going to show up the way people think it is. I think that the people who are doing this kind of work, diving into their past lives, diving into who we've been, are the ones who are going to uncover the history, are the ones who are going to uncover the truth of who we really are and be able to share that knowledge in a way that we're going to realize that some of us are actually the aliens.
I was just gonna say, I think, yeah, they're already here. Like,
Yeah.
for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, but I have so many questions. So I don't know what a residential school is. So I didn't want to
that's
interrupt
okay.
at the time. Are you
That is
okay
okay. Yeah,
sharing with that?
absolutely. So here in Canada, back in the mid 1800s ish, the Catholic Church and the Canadian government thought it was a good idea to civilize the Indigenous people.
Mm.
And they literally took the children from the families. And this went on for well over 100 years, with the last schools closing somewhere in the early 90s, believe it or not. Um, they literally took these children in and stripped away their culture in a lot of ways. So I am an indigenous woman without culture. I was not raised in any of those traditions. I was not taught any of those traditions. And it's not easy to, get into the communities again and learn them again, because they are very suspicious of outsiders. And very grateful for some of the people around me who have helped me with some of those things. But it's definitely, and they were not a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
There was a lot of underhanded behavior, children going without,
Mm.
physical, emotional, sexual abuse, those kinds of things. So that runs through that runs through my family very, very deeply. And it's something that we've worked very hard to try and overcome over
Mhm.
the last few years, especially when they did, they said they discovered some graves behind the churches and the schools and things over the last few years. And then they went back and went, oh, just kidding. We didn't actually find anything.
Hmm.
And it was devastating because there were children who did not survive. And it was a big, um, it was just a really hard thing for the Indigenous community to bear, really.
Yeah.
Parents separated from their children, families torn apart. It was very, very difficult. Very
Yeah.
difficult.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So when you went from your dad's like kind of religious household into your mom, so your mom had told you about these things at this point, or was okay, so you were aware of like kind of her past and all of that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
We didn't talk about it much when I was older, and the only reason it ever came up in my household is because we learned about it in school.
Hmm.
And then I came to find out that not everybody learned about this stuff in school.
Yeah.
So, but in high school history class, I had started learning a little bit about it.
Hmm.
And I came home and I talked to my mom. I was like, Mom, did you know this was a thing? And she shut me down hard about it. And that told me a lot about what I needed to know
Yeah.
um, about, her past and, and,
Hmm.
and why she did the things she did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so going from your dad, and then so you were already having sort of experiences up until the point where you switched
Yes.
homes. And how did that like
Yes.
how did that land or how was that received in like a religious like household?
So the one and only time I mentioned something to my stepmother, uh, because what had happened was this is like my very first very clear memory of actually seeing a spirit.
Mhm.
Her grandmother, so my stepmother's grandmother, had passed away in the bedroom that was my bedroom. And I remember one night I was standing at the top of the stairs and I look and I can see a woman standing in my doorway. And I'm,
Mhm.
12 years old, 11, 12 years old, going, okay, so grandma's in the bedroom. Okay, cool. Because it didn't feel like, you'd think, oh, I should be scared or something
Yeah.
like that.
Did you know
Not
her
at
before
all.
she passed?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I only knew the story that she had passed in my room, and I had
Okay.
never seen her before or since that. And so the next morning I said, oh, yeah, last night when I was getting ready for bed, I saw your grandma in the doorway. And she just went, oh, okay. Like there was no.
The audio cut out. I can't hear you for some reason. I can't hear you.
Oh, no.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Okay. Mercury be
I
retrograding.
know. I forgot about that too. Yeah. That's
That's okay. That's okay.
yeah.
We'll make it through.
Okay, so you had mentioned it and
So
she like didn't really say anything.
there was no acknowledgement or not acknowledgement, right?
Hmm.
It was just, oh, okay. And she just said, well, yeah, she died in that room. And that was literally the only conversation we had about it. There was no, and so it made me wonder, later as an adult, as a child, I didn't understand, but as an adult, it's made me wonder, had she had experiences like that? And is that why she didn't really make a big deal about it,
Yeah.
because we've always been told like that's not real. You're making things up.
Hmm.
Um, and so for me, that was kind of the foundation of like, okay, well, nobody actually really cares that this stuff is happening to me, so I will just keep it to myself.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to kind of overcome that. It was kind of a reinforcement of the classic witch wound.
Mm.
And it wasn't until my mid 30s that I kind of went, you know what, I got to do something about this. So
Yeah.
it was quite a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I was raised, I guess, like in the church as well, sort of. And I actually my last podcast interview was with a gentleman who had written a book, Christianity Reimagined. So we kind of like dove into all like the concepts, and it was really hard for me to like separate, right? Like for me, I was Catholic. And
Yeah.
so to separate Catholicism from like
Yes.
spirituality and like it's just like a whole thing. So I definitely and I I never like had experience. For me, it was always feeling. And so I was such a feeling
Yes.
child. I didn't necessarily hear things or see things, but like I knew there was something, and my feelings, I feel like, were just not really honored, or I just thought it was crazy. I was like, I guess nobody else feels like this. Like there's something wrong with me. So that's been such an interesting journey for me to like connect with those feelings. But then
Yeah.
when you went to, okay, so then you went to your mom's, who was a little bit more in like the kind of spiritual realm with like crystals and, metaphysical shops and things like that. Were you then like, were you able to express more? Like, did those things come back online, or it, I guess, enhance in that time, or it was just later in life?
They did a little bit during that time period, but when I would mention things to my mother, she would shut them down.
Mm.
Um, she saw what I was capable of, and she didn't. I think she had experienced some things. Again, she wasn't a talker. Denial was a big thing. And I think she had experienced some things in her own life but every once in a while, she would come out with something like, I remember when I was pregnant with my first child, and I was like, this is going to be her name if it's a girl, and this is going to be her name if it's a boy. She ended up being a girl. But my mom just said to me, that's not going to be her name. And I went, okay, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Because that's what we do when we're in our early 20s and
Yeah.
don't think our parents know anything. But yeah, when she was born, both my husband at the time and I, we looked at her and said, no, your name her name is Sarah.
Mm.
It was not, we were going to call her Jessica
Hmm.
because, in 1999, 2000, that was a popular name. And yeah, when I told her the name, she said, I knew it wasn't going to be her name. So my mom was very psychic, right? But
Yeah.
she didn't admit it. But that was just one particular example that I really remember.
Hmm.
But myself, I was having dreams. And as a teenager, I interpreted them as apocalyptic dreams because that was the knowledge base I had, growing up in church,
Mm.
fire and brimstone. But looking back on it, I understand now it was actually a warning about the energy of my stepfather and that the whole household and the whole way of being, because he didn't do business in integrity. I found out later there was a lot of drugs being dealt behind my back.
Mm.
Like I had no idea, you know. I joke like I could have made a ton of money as a kid because I found out my mom kept a stash of pot under the arm of the couch. Like
Yeah.
you just you find out things about your parents, and when the blinders are taken off, you realize they did everything they could to shelter you from the world. And it took me a long time to kind of reconcile, like, these people who I trusted, these people who I thought were supposed to love me, who were supposed to teach me how to live life, they didn't really do that. I had to figure a lot of it out on my own. So it was a very interesting kind of revelation, and it was especially more like in my mid to late 20s when I started figuring that part out, that it was a warning to me that I needed to get out of there. And so by the time my oldest child was 6 7 months old, I had pretty much cut my mom out because I knew there was just something inside me that knew that if I allowed her to treat my children the way she treated me, that they were going to have to go through the same things I did. And I didn't want them to
Mm.
go through that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's been a tough journey to not have my mother in my life. But I've had other friends and, in-laws and things like that that have all kind of helped me move through, that relationship. And it's hard, but I did walk away from that with forgiveness. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I honor you for making that decision. I know it's not an easy one, and
no,
that you had support through it, and you could move through it and choose something better for you and your child. That's, I think, yeah, I think that's what so many of us are working towards, right? It's always trying to do better for our kids, and sometimes it takes that, and it's
yeah,
like the hardest thing to set those boundaries. But
it
yeah.
is. It's very
Yeah.
difficult.
Mhm. So when did you begin to have these like past life memory like recalls, and like what did it look like? How did you trust it? Like how
Oh.
did that experience happen?
So, like I mentioned, I had joined the spiritualist church around 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And I started going to their mediumship development group. And part of that was, we were starting to look into past lives and things like that. And
Mm,
um, there was another group that I was part of as well, another development group. And I think this was the first time we just decided one night, let's do a past life meditation, right? Like I was getting into this, and because I have done this for so many lifetimes, I was getting into this and I was seeing things in a matter of months that it took people years to connect with. And so when she said, let's do this, I was like, yeah, because I just assumed at that point, I just assumed I was going to be able to do it. And the very first past life that I recalled was being a housekeeper in Victorian England for a very wealthy family. I was kind of like the head housekeeper. I made sure, the maids and the butlers and everybody went and did their thing where they were supposed to, and oversaw all of the work. But the other piece of that was it was a little bit like a Lady Robin Hood. I was stealing from my employer because I was seeing so many of these young girls being abused by their employers and ending up pregnant or with some sort of disease because of the rampant behavior that was happening. And so I was helping them because who wants to raise a child? Because again, there was such a lack of options in Victorian England as far as women's rights and things like that, obviously. And so I was helping these women, making sure they were fed and clothed and housed by stealing from my employer because they had plenty of money. And somehow I never got caught. But what that translated to in this life was I took the commandment, thou shalt not steal, incredibly seriously, and still
mm,
do to this day, right?
mm,
Um, to some extent, because I think that even though I appreciated the opportunity to help those girls, I knew somewhere that there was probably a better way to do it, but this was the option I had at the time.
mm.
So yeah, and it
Yeah.
just all kind of came pouring through. The difference kind of between like a download and a memory, right? It to me, it literally feels like the speed.
Mm,
So a download, it's like you don't know the one moment you don't know any of the information, like literally the next moment, the whole story just kind of compresses in. A memory, it takes time to play out, right? Like an actual, like if I'm sitting here thinking about what I had for dinner last night. That's going to take time for me to go, okay, well, I got out the taco kit and I browned the meat and I can see the steps. Whereas with a past life memory, it all just kind of compresses in and comes in at once. And then you have to unpack it.
mm.
So there's a big difference between, how we like actually remember things that have happened to us in this life and how that kind of cosmic information comes in.
So it comes in at once and then you have to sort of sift through it, is what you're
Yeah,
saying. Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so, but is it like a visual, like a movie roll almost, like as you're kind of like going through it, or is it more like a knowing or a feeling?
So I've worked really hard on opening up like all the Claire
Mm,
senses, right? The hearing, tasting, smelling, the whole bit, right?
yeah.
So for me, it's almost an immersive experience,
Mm,
but it's going to be different for everyone. It
okay.
depends what your primary Claire sense is. So if you're clairvoyant, it's going to be the movie. If you're
Mm-hmm.
claircognizant, it's going to be the knowing. Some
Mm,
people hear like songs related to their past lives. Some people might be sparked by the thought of tasting a certain type of food or the thought of a certain type of smell. Because again, those are real things that happen. And the first time I ever experienced clairgoustiance was just the tasting was
mm,
just, it was crazy. Um, but it's going to be different for everyone. And again, we also, I sometimes discount clairsentience because I don't have that just feeling a lot of the time.
okay.
It's a straight knowing these because I've practiced. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, some people, the feeling is going to be far more prominent. So they're going to feel it.
Mm.
Um, And so what I recommend when you're kind of working with that kind of stuff is, like journal, trust yourself, and like get to know what part of you is the strongest in that sense, and practice,
Yeah.
because it's not something that comes overnight.
Hmm.
And mostly because, society, what does society say? It says, that's not real. You're making it up. It's in your imagination. Well, sort of, but it's not,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is who you've been.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, mine has definitely been more in feeling, and then like I have a visual. But for me, I feel like it drops in, and like you said, a matter of trusting it. Like when I travel places like Mexico, I don't know what it was. When I flew over Mexico, I just had this feeling. It was like I'm home. Like I just knew I was so deeply connected. I had no logical reason
Oh,
why. Never been there
oh.
before. And it was just like seeing
What's
the
your
landscape.
connection there to Chichen Itza?
To what?
Chichen Itza,
Uh-huh.
the ruins there, they're like
Okay.
temples and stuff like that immediately
Okay.
popped through.
That's what
So
popped through. Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting. Yeah. I remember
do
like
some
going over and just
research.
think, I will have to, I know. And what is your process then? Like, because there's been like a few instances in my life where I just like feel so much, and it's
Yeah.
not always pleasant things, right? There have been things where I'm like watching a movie and I just like I feel gross. Immediately, like my whole body is
Yes.
like, oh, like like extreme violence. Like there's a part of me that feels like there was something horrible that happened to me in a past life because I have like a
Yep.
response to it that doesn't make sense. And so like yeah, I guess what's your process into like maybe tapping into that and unpacking it?
So it's kind of been my process, like all along, of how I just work through the energy or the emotions of whatever, right? Because what are emotions, energy, and motion? So I
Mm-hmm.
had to get like a foundation. I had to get a psychological foundation. I had to get a trauma informed foundation, because some of those past lives are incredibly traumatic. So basically, my process now is paying attention to the signs and synchronicities that are coming up around me, paying attention to songs I'm hearing, because I'm very clairaudient.
Mm-hmm.
Like music, again, Pisces are so connected to music,
Yeah.
right? Like my whole life is music. Even though, as much as I thought I wanted to be some like famous singer when I was a kid, that clearly wasn't the path my soul said we were going to take. Um, but like paying attention to the music that I'm hearing, paying attention to things that are being said in conversations and how they make me feel. But the biggest thing is, how am I feeling? Like if I'm feeling off, or like if I'm sad or depressed or like angry, or like where is that coming from? And so the next piece of my process would be to do some sort of somatic movement, like breath work. I work with something called block therapy, things like that. Maybe even some yoga movement, right? Because one of the things I've learned is we don't move energy without moving the body.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to be in the body. So don't discount what it's showing you. Maybe there's pain too. That's another way it shows up. Um, and because being in pain is not a natural state for humans, uh, even though so many people just accept it as the norm, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at kind of all of those things, but like how's my cycle responding? How's my digestion responding? How's my appetite responding? Am I clear headed? All of these things, because this is how we are meant to be. We are meant to be, in that homeostasis. And when things are responding in ways that don't make sense to my environment around me, because for me, and not everybody has the luxury of this, and I'm very, very well aware of the privilege that I carry, being able to spend my days and nights exploring this stuff and not have to worry too much about the real world, let's put it that way. um, I have people in my life who help take care of me, and I appreciate that. I take care of them in ways too, but I'm very, very, very privileged to be able to do this. But if you don't, just take 20 minutes a day to check in with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important. And then beyond that, then I start getting into my practices, right? Like I said, that Kundalini Reiki has been a fantastic tool. And I say that because there are components of it that help me look into, like there's an emotional component, there's a karmic component, there's a past life component. There's a few others too that I can't think of off the top of my head, but working with that and literally, quite literally sitting in meditation, asking, where does this come from? Is it from this life? Is it a past life? Because when you're working in, say, the Akashic records or in the halls of a mentee, you can start looking. And for people who don't know, the halls of a mentee are just a more galactic version. I have a bunch of lifetimes as a record keeper there. That was a lot of fun to learn. But they're just a more galactic version of the Akashic records. They hold far more information, we'll put it that way.
Okay.
And so when we're, getting into that kind of work, that's when you want to start asking those probing questions. Where is this coming from? Is there a contract? Is there a scenario that I need to know about? Is it connected to a person in my life? Like, you just start asking questions, and the information will start presenting itself. Whether that is, like you say, through visuals, through knowing, through audio, through taste, through smell, all of those kinds of things, through feeling. And then you just step in, and then I just have my protocols to start clearing it out, whether I'm working with, forgiveness or the Ho'oponopono or working through the spiritual courts. There's so many different things, and each situation has its own way of wanting to be resolved. So it's, but just being able to kind of peel back all of those layers. Like, for me, that's so much fun. That's my Scorpio rising going, hey, I want to be the detective. I want to find out everything, right?
Yeah.
And I have some eighth house placements too that really kind of push me into wanting to like, let's peel it back. Let's pick the scab off the wound, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, for the most part, lets me kind of live a pretty happy life. But there are days where I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to turn on the saddest song I can find. I'm just going to sit here and cry about it for a little while. And then we'll figure out what's going on, because sometimes
Yeah.
you just need to do that. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of my basic process. And it seems like, oh my gosh, that must take you days on end. I can wake up knowing that something needs to be cleared and have it gone by mid-morning, right? Because I've practiced, not because I'm anybody special or anything like that, but because I've taken the time and practiced. And that's the biggest thing I share with my clients too. Like, please practice. You are giving me money for this knowledge, so make sure you are taking this and using it and utilizing it to your highest potential, because you earned it. Like, you earned the money, you earned the right to spend that money on this knowledge. So please use it to your fullest potential.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing with so much, right? It's like consistency and continuing to show up. Like, I think we think that like a one off, and like we
Yes,
have to keep doing the work and keep chiseling away. And it so often feels like, you break through one thing and then there's, the whole onion underneath, and you're like, oh, here we go. There's more to be seen. So,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. So how do you, when you come into this, so like for you, when you kind of like cracked it open and all of this like past life stuff like came through, like a 2 billion year relationship with Hades, that's manipulative, and like, how do you reconcile like in this life? Because I would imagine not every life that you have is going to be peaceful and pleasant and, you're high vibe and all these things like that, right? Like that, like, I'm also pretty plutonic in my chart. So I know that like I'm very familiar with the darkness and the depth and like all of that stuff. So how do you like reconcile or like move through maybe some of the things that come up in past lives that like you're not I don't know, like I don't want to say like not proud of, but maybe like wouldn't be or just challenging, I guess.
Yeah. Literally, for me, it has been just like, okay, I did these things. I experienced these things, but they are not me now.
Mhm.
This is not how I would respond now. And that's when we have to work with self-forgiveness. Like I said, that the Ho'oponopono, that 4-phrase little prayer, has been a wonderful little friend. But just accepting, right? That's who I was. It is okay that I did these things. It was an experience. I learned from it. I learned what not to do. And letting go and moving on is a huge, huge, huge lesson with past lives.
Mm.
Just, okay, this is not who I am. We are going to drop this mantle now. And of course, we do have to clear the energy of the karma with that. We have to clear any contracts that go along with that, because those scenarios can affect how you live your life now. They can affect, excuse me, they can affect how you make your money. They can affect, how your relationships go. They can affect your living situations. They can affect literally every aspect of your life. So, being able to just really step into forgiveness and letting go are probably the two key pieces to that.
Yeah. When you come back, so like I guess like if you have family dynamics in like this lifetime, right, that maybe you're like attached, or I guess my question is, could they be attached to another life, or like bringing the same people like cycling through that we have to like do that work with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's the thing, it's not going to be like the same people every single
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But you do kind of have like a group of souls that you work with, that you come through with. I know for myself in particular, I have two souls in particular that I'm actually very deeply connected to, because of our history, but also because of energetic actions and, we'll say, magic things that we did, because humans don't have words for this kind of stuff. It's actually quite, when you start getting out into like your galactic lives, there's a lot of technology involved in this kind of stuff,
Mm.
that we would maybe deem quantum technology. But I have a what we would call a kundalini entanglement with someone, where I have a piece of his kundalini energy and he has a piece of mine, and it's like, instead of it just going up the spine, it's like a helix up our spines.
Mm.
It's fascinating and makes for, like, people who think the twin flame journey is hard. This is like a whole nother level of like, if I don't love and accept myself, and if that person doesn't love and accept themselves, your life is a living hell.
Mm.
So, that is something to caution people about. There are some very extreme, extreme things that can happen when of course, the sun decides to come out now.
Yeah.
There are some very extreme things that can happen when you start stepping into these things. And this is why we have to be careful that we have the good mental foundation before we really step into these.
Yeah.
One, because the past lives can be very traumatic, but two, it requires some very radical acceptance of yourself and very radical acceptance of ideas that may not jive with the culture that we understand now.
Mhm.
I have one past life in particular, when I lived on the planet close to the Rigel star. We just call it Rigel because it's easier to remember, right? But on that planet at that time, it was acceptable because a year on that planet was actually equivalent to closer to 18 months here,
Okay.
just the way things kind of moved around. And so it was acceptable at 12 years old to be considered an adult and to go and do adult things. And there's some very adult themes in some of the things, the stories that I've written based on these past lives because of it. So, and people might read that and go, oh my gosh, like, you know, you were groomed or you were this or you were that. But I'm like, no, this was acceptable in that culture on that planet at that time. They had a population decline, so they encouraged procreation,
Mm.
and young. So
Yeah.
it was, but a 12-year-old Rigelian at the time was considered similar to being like 18, 19 years old.
Mhm.
So it wasn't unusual for these things to happen. Um, Similar to like rave culture was acceptable. So you had these 12, 13, 14, 15 year olds going out and partying like they're 30-year-old adults, and having children and having these lives that we would look at it and go, that's wrong, but to them it wasn't. So
Yeah.
that was another kind of thing that really popped into us. We can't judge our past lives on our standards now.
Yeah. It makes sense.
There are so many different cultural norms. I'm a huge sci-fi fan, right? And imagine that. And there's one show in particular that that really kind of got me. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with Seth MacFarlane's show, The Orville, where he has a culture that is strictly men. And they actually do like in this culture, he explored the idea of where they, if a child is born female, they do a gender reassignment surgery, and the kind of like the council or whatever, they're like trying to impose their idea of standards and cultural norms on this other culture. And but they were like, you can't, how can you do that when this has been our way of life for so long?
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually really appreciated that perspective from his storytelling in that series, because I was like, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And I was kind of watching it at a time when I was starting to dive into some of these lives, and to
Yeah.
see kind of the juxtaposition of how that's always how things happen for me, though. I
Yeah.
watch something, or I find a new show, or I find a new song or something that literally goes along with the synchronicities, balance out with whatever I'm
Mm-hmm.
experiencing on that past life level. So it's really really fascinating to kind of watch how that plays out in your life, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I that happens to me a lot too, or even like yesterday I was feeling really frustrated about something and I try not to scroll, but we're human and I sometimes do, but like I got on and literally like the first two things that popped up were like exactly what I needed to hear and I just closed it and I was like that's all I needed, just like I needed that
yep.
response and I'm not, and so that was like really affirming. And I think like if you're paying it if you're looking for it, if you're hearing, if you're receptive to it, I think it's easy
Yes,
to
yes,
recognize those.
exactly.
If you're just offline and like
Mhm.
you're gonna miss all of it, right? But I think that's
Exactly.
yeah, it's definitely I'll like I'm gonna start paying. So my thing is like my dreams. I journal my dreams every single morning, and but I'm never like they don't make sense to me. I'm like there's no rhyme or reason to like what these are saying, but I know that there's a meaning to them, and so
Yeah.
it's like my next I guess like little like side quest is like I want to start
I
really
love it.
understanding what my dreams are telling me because they're so vivid. They're so
Yeah.
like I had pages in the morning of just like writing my dreams. So maybe like just noticing songs or things that come up, in the
Yeah.
morning, like on
Yeah.
my kind of little commute, maybe that'll help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know. And it makes me laugh because I don't dream. I don't remember my dreams
No.
anymore.
Hmm.
And I think it is because I've accepted that I'm not just here in this body. I'm all the things. And it's
Yeah.
aligned for me now. Before I used
Mm.
to think that I had to keep them separate, right? Like here's
Yeah.
my human body and here's my, life out, so my life in the cosmos, so to speak.
Hmm.
But now it's fully aligned. And so just being able to just kind of tap in at will and go, okay, what's going on up there? And the fact that I am addressing the emotions as they come up, as opposed to,
Yeah.
oh, I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that later. And of course, the sun just happens to, uh, um, lighting was great till the sun came out.
Yeah.
Um, when we don't have that opportunity, that's when, and I do kind of laugh because people just go, well, I had this dream. And I say, you know what, you're going to have to consult somebody who deals with dreams, because that is not
Yeah.
my area of expertise.
Yeah.
But I have just learned for myself, when I do have a dream that I remember, that I just kind of take a look, what's the symbolism, where is that kind of
Mm.
coming up, and how does that relate to um, you know what I'm dealing with. I know there was a while I had a few dreams where I would be in these places where I would want to have a shower and I couldn't,
Mm.
because I had some emotions that I was not expressing, and I couldn't find a way to express them at that particular time.
Yeah.
And so that was, I just was like, well, what does it mean if I can't have a shower in my dream? And for me, that would be like the most devastating thing, right? Like my
Mm.
shower is my daily kind of
Yeah,
armor,
with so much
right?
Pisces, all
So
that water.
yes, yeah,
And Scorpio.
exactly. Um, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so um, that's what I just say to people, like find people who do dreams, find people who,
Hmm.
and don't be afraid to do a little research yourself.
Yeah.
Find some books, find some, I mean, Google might not necessarily have all the best answers, but there are sometimes some, and I always say like, what one of those resonates, right? Like what hits, what
Yeah.
lands when you
Yeah.
read that. Just like you said, we open social media and
Hmm.
something pops and lands, and then, okay, that's it. That's what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes will funnel it through ChatGPT, and like discernment is huge, obviously. And like you said, like feeling into what
Oh
feels
yeah.
resonant and what doesn't. But like sometimes I'll do that. I'll be like, I had a
Yeah.
dream about like a butterfly or a wasp or like just to like get the symbolism of like what the thing is, and then I can see it was like, huh, does that
Yeah.
feel accurate or not? And yeah, I mean, gosh, I think so much of right now is like, especially Pluto and Aquarius, like discernment, discernment,
Hmm.
discernment. Like there's so much,
Yes.
even social media, it's crazy. You go on there and I don't even know it's real anymore. You see like videos of like animals
I
and I'm like,
know.
it's not even a real animal. So it's wild, the need to really come in. And I think this is really why conversations like this are really important. I feel like is because
Yes.
it's coming into, like you said, coming into our body so that we can understand what it's telling
Yes.
us, what feels
Yes.
like a yes, what feels like a no, what feels like I need to walk away, like whatever it is
Yes.
so crucial right now. Because again, yeah, like just there's so much noise out there.
So
And
much.
yeah, and I love, with the whole like karmic, I mean, past lives and karmic agreements and things, like I said, kind of, in the beginning too, it's like knowing that there are certain things in my life where I'm like, I know this doesn't come from this life, you know, and just like, I guess, knowing what to do with that. And I love that you said the Ho'oponopono, because that has come up to me like 3 or 4 times in the last week as I've kind of been like moving through certain things. And I'm like, I guess I just need to sit there with it because it continues to, people keep telling me or like having conversations and that keeps coming up. But yeah, I love that you offered
Yeah.
that as like a way to kind of like for forgiveness, right? To move through these things because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think I had an experience just like the other night, and it was a pattern from the past that felt really heavy. I felt like I was grieving something, and I just had to sit with myself. I didn't do that, but I had to sit with myself and just like accept that part of myself. And I think that's what I hadn't done before was
Yeah.
like the resistance and oh, I don't want to be like that, or I'm going to change that, or I'm going to, oh, I'm not like that. And then I was like, you know what? Like, this is just part of who I am, and it's fine. And the release I felt was incredible. I was like, that's it. I just had to like really be like, I see you. I feel
Yep.
you. I see you. I love you. And we're gonna move on. But yeah, it was beautiful.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've been working through that a lot with the energy of the person because the hilarious part about the person that I have the Kundalini entanglement with, I know who they are, they know who I am, but we haven't actually met yet in this life.
Oh,
And
really?
this is the first lifetime since that happened that we have not been in physical contact.
Hmm.
So it's been a very
Do you know who they are in
fascinating
this
journey. But
lifetime?
that's been a really yes, but
Yeah.
I can't say.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's that's interesting.
um
Yeah.
yeah. Um and so working through because a big part of that is on kind of like that cosmic astral level. I'm
Mm-hmm.
working through these big patterns with them right now, and it's been a huge lesson in not only accepting myself but accepting them for exactly how they are.
Mm,
And it's
yeah.
we are conditioned to love conditionally in this life, and ultimately I don't want to be like that.
Yeah. I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always try, and I think presence is so powerful for that because it's like, I don't know. We're so afraid, I think, of being vulnerable and being open and getting hurt. And it's like, if we can just like give everything that we have in every moment, like, I feel like you can't go wrong, just like being open and honest. So I don't know, it's beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
okay. So, well, one thing I just want to tie back into I think like the very first thing that you said was about fun, right? And I think I always like kind of come back to that because this work can be so heavy, right? And then there are some moments in life where I'm
Yes.
just sit there and I'm like, why is this so serious? Let's just throw it away and go do something fun. Because it's just like bringing that like
Exactly.
playfulness and joy into it. So like how can we incorporate that, or how do you incorporate that into work like this that can be so deep and so heavy and so meaningful?
So, yeah. So, a big thing that I have done was reconnecting with writing.
Mm,
And so I actually started a Patreon where I'm posting these stories because it's like, how can I tell this, but tell it in a way that shows the healing that happened, it shows the love that happened. And then, I'll just go have a karaoke dance party in the shower or something, like
yeah.
I just I really, like you said, presence. I try to be present. Like, what do I need in this moment to feel happy? What do I need in this moment to express joy? And so that might be through writing, it might be through art. As you can see, I've got a few pieces on the
Mm.
wall behind me that are all, except for, well, except for this one closest to me, but
Yeah.
they're all mine. How can I, maybe I'll chase my cat around and throw the ball for him, little things like that.
Mhm.
Just in the moment, what is fun for me.
Yeah.
And, or maybe today I want to play around with coloring my hair or, like silly little things that feel
Mm.
good to me. And like really paying attention to the places where I'm not judging myself.
Yeah.
Because, self-judgment was my favorite pastime
Mm.
before,
Yeah.
And so we're really trying to move out of that
Yeah.
and move out of kind of being uh, what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Just accepting, self-acceptance, because
Mhm.
the more you accept yourself, the less seriously you take everything that's going on around you.
Yeah.
And also like not letting myself um, kind of get bogged down by what is going on out in the world too. Not ignoring it, but not like diving into it and absorbing it day after day after day. I
Yeah.
have to actually tell my partner sometimes, I have to tell him like, hey, I need a break from that stuff. You want to watch it, you go ahead. I'm just going to
Yeah.
spend some time clearing the energy now because
Mhm. Yeah.
people forget that all that comes into your house when you're watching it on the screens. So
Yeah.
um and then again, just being aware of your own energy, being aware of who you are and how you respond to things can change everything for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. I love diving into this, and I'm definitely going to start paying more attention to synchronicities and songs and all these things that come in and really like do the work to kind of like unpack these because I've had little sprinklings of it, here and there. And I've been really, especially with Scorpio season, I've been like so deep in my
Yeah.
subconscious work where I'm like, I need to unhook. Like the bigger astrological picture right now is just like endings and beginnings. I'm like, I have to leave this stuff behind. And so I'm all in. So
Yeah.
so thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Actually, right before we did this, I was part of a little group meditation for the
Mm.
portal day today.
Yeah.
And I loved how she explained that this Jupiter retrograde in Cancer right now is
Mm-hmm.
expansion through emotional integrity. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, that just lands so hard because,
Yeah.
again,
And that's
like
today.
the water, the emotions,
Yeah.
it is today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cancer for me is in my 12th house. So I feel like just Jupiter being moving through it too is like having me so
Yeah.
like surrender has just been a theme since it like moved in there. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't, I don't control
Yeah.
any of it. It's not my timeline.
That was that. Yeah. That was me back
Yeah.
in February when Mars
Mm.
moved through Cancer in my eighth house. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
fun. That was a
Yeah.
fun month.
It was a fun month, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much. How can people find you? How can they work with you? And what are you working on next? Anything that you want to share?
Okay, so I'm on the web now. Primarily these days, I am on Threads and on Instagram. I do have my own website, moonoverpisces.ca. I am Canadian. Everything on my website is in Canadian dollars for all of the American people who are watching, because the exchange is great for you guys. Um, Also, I am actually stepping into my own podcast.
Mm.
I put a post on Threads actually saying that I wanted to be a guest on people's podcasts, only people thought I was asking for guests. So
The universe is putting it on you.
the, the universe said, hey,
Yeah.
you're going to start a podcast. So
Mm.
that is a project I am working on. So that will be on my YouTube channel that is currently content-less because I took all of my content down. I needed to do a timeline cleanse. So I took down a lot of content that I have put up over the last 5 years.
Mm.
Um, So those are the ways you can find me on the internet, working with me. I do offer one-on-ones, but I do recommend book a discovery call. Let's find out if we are compatible. And I offer a 6 and 12 week individual one-on-one coaching, where we would go into the past lives and all of those things. End of January, like I said, we're going to be offering that 6 month group intensive where we really like 6 months every week. We're going to dive in. We're going to look at your entire wheel of life. We're going to look at every aspect of your life. You're going to learn so many things about yourself. I have 3 major modalities that I teach in this. One of them that is one that I actually channeled myself. And yeah, so that's my big kind of project coming up. I do have some micro courses, free micro courses coming up, that will kind of give people a taste of what that 6 months is going to look like.
Mhm.
So if they're interested in that, they can find that on my website. The first one, I believe, is mid-November, but I'm going to offer one in December and one at the beginning of January before we actually dive into the 6 months, so that we can. So people can kind of get to know me, and I'm kind of rebuilding the foundation because I took a few months off here to really dive into myself, back in the spring. So
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, that's it. And also, if you're curious, come on the Patreon. You can come read some of my stories, find out where I've been, who I've been, especially if you're like interested in like sci-fi and romance, because that's kind of where they kind of go.
Hmm.
All my fourth house placements, this life is about relationships and family and home and all of those things. So yeah, I'm a sucker for a good romance.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, everything will be down in the show notes for the listeners. They can go down and just click everything. And yeah, thank you again for being here and for sharing everything with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having
You're
me.
welcome.